welcome back. Today's story, we are still reading Babe the Gallant Pig, and we have got to the point where Babe has proved himself to be a great talent at herding sheep. The farmer Hoggett is thinking of competing him in a sheepdog competition, and Fly, his dog mum, has decided to put him on a diet and make him exercise lots so he gets stronger and faster. Let's see what happens next. One beautiful morning, when the sky was clear and cloudless, and the air so crisp and fresh you could almost taste it, Babe woke feeling on top of the world. Like a trained athlete, he felt so charged with energy that he simply couldn't keep still. He bounced about the stable floor on all 4 feet, shaking his head about and uttering a series of sharp, short squeaks. "You're full of it this morning," said Fly with a yawn. "You'd better run to the top of the hill and back to work it off." "Okay, Mum," said Babe, and off he shot while Fly settled comfortably back into the straw. Dashing across the home paddock, Babe bounded up the hill and looked about for the sheep. Though he knew he would see them later on, he felt so pleased with life that he thought he'd like to share that feeling with Ma and all the others. Before he ran home again, just to say hello. Good morning, everybody. Before he ran home again, just to say hello, good morning, everybody. Isn't it a lovely day? They were, he knew, in the most distant of all fields on the farm, up at the top of the lane. He looked across, expecting that they would be grazing quietly or lying comfortably and cuddling in the morning sun, only to see them galloping madly in every direction. On the breeze came cries of "woof," but not in the usual bored, almost automatic tones of complaint that they used when Fly worked them. These were yells of real terror, desperate calls for help. As he watched, 2 other animals came in sight, one large, one small, and he heard the sound of barking and yapping as they dashed about after the fleeing sheep. "You get some wolves will chase sheep and kill 'em." Ma's exact words came back to Babe, and without a second thought he set off as fast as he could to go in the direction of the noise. What a sight greeted him when he arrived in the far field. The flock, usually so tightly bunched, were scattered everywhere, eyes bulging, mouths open, heads hanging in their evident distress, and it was clear the dogs had been there for some time. A few sheep had tried in their terror to jump the wire fencing and had become caught in it. Some had fallen into ditches and got stuck. Some were limping as they ran about, and on the grass were lumps of wool torn from others. Most dreadful of all, in the middle of all the field, the warriors had brought down a ewe, which lay on its side, feebly kicking them as they growled and tugged at it. On the day the rusters had come, Babe felt a mixture of fear and anger. Now he knew nothing but a blind rage, and he charged flat out at the 2 dogs, grunting and snorting with fury. Nearest to him was the smaller dog, a kind of mongrel terrier, which was snapping at one of the ewe's hind legs, deaf to everything but the excitement of the worry. Before it could move, Babe took it across the back and flung it to one side, and the force of his rush carried him on into the bigger dog and knocked it flying. This one, a large black crossbreed, part collie, part retriever, was made of sterner stuff than the terrier, which was already running dazedly away, and it picked itself up and came snarling back at the pig. Perhaps, in the confusion of the moment, it thought this was just another sheep that had somehow found the courage to attack it. But if so, it soon knew better. For as it came on, Babe chopped at it with his terrible pig's bite, a bite that grips and tears, and now it was not sheep's blood that was spilled. Howling in pain, the black dog turned and ran, his tail between his legs. He ran, in fact, for his life, an open-mouthed, bristling pig hard on his heels. The field was clear, and Babe suddenly came back to his senses. He turned and hurried to the fallen ewe, and found whom, now that the dogs had gone, the horrified flock was beginning to gather in a rough circle. She lay still now, as Babe stood panting by her side, a draggled side where the warriors had pulled at it, and he suddenly realised it was Ma. "Ma!" he cried. "Ma, are you okay?" She did not seem too badly hurt. He could not see any gaping wounds, though blood was coming from one ear where the dogs had bitten it. The old ewe opened an eye. Her voice, when she spoke, was as hoarse as ever, but now not much more than a whisper. "Hello, young'un," she said. Babe dropped his head and gently licked the ear to try to stop the bleeding, and some of the blood stuck to his snout. "Can you get up?" he asked. For some time, Ma did not answer, and he looked anxiously at her. But the eye that he could see was still open. "I don't reckon," she said. "It's all right, Ma," Babe said. "The wolves have gone far away." "Far, far," chorused the flock. "And Fly and the boss will soon be here to look after you." Ma made no answer or movement. Only her ribs jumped to the thump of her tired old heart. "You'll be all right. Honestly, you will," said Babe. "Oh, said Ma, and then the eye closed and the ribs jumped no more. "Oh, Ma," said Babe. Ma, mourned the flock as the Land Rover came up the lane. Farmer Hoggett had heard nothing of the worrying. The field was too far away, the wind in the wrong direction, but he had been anxious, and so by now was Fly, because Pig was nowhere to be found. The moment they entered the field, both man and dog could see something was terribly wrong. Why else was the flock so obviously distressed, panting and gasping and dishevelled? Why had they formed that ragged circle, and what was in the middle of it? Farmer Hoggett strode forward, Fly before him, parting the ring to make way, only to see a sight that struck horror into the hearts of them both. There before them lay a dead ewe, and bending over it was the pig, his snout almost touching the outer stretched neck, a snout they saw that was stained with blood. And that's the end of that chapter. How sad for Babe. Chapter 9 is called Was It Babe? So I would imagine that Farmer Hoggett and Fly seeing little Babe with blood on his snout and are concerned it might have been him. "Go home, Pig," said Farmer Hoggett in a voice that was so quiet and cold that Babe hardly recognised it. Bewildered, he trotted off obediently, while behind him the farmer picked up the dead ewe and carried it to the Land Rover. Then, with Fly's help, he began the task of rescuing those sheep that were caught or stuck, and of making sure that no others were badly hurt. This done, he left Fly to guard the flock and drove home. Back at the farm, Babe felt simply very, very sad. The sky was still cloudless, the air still crisp, and this was a very different pig from the one that had cantered carefree up the hill not half an hour ago. In those 30 minutes, he had seen naked fear and cruelty and death, and now to cap it all, the boss was angry with him, had sent him home in some sort of disgrace. What had he done wrong? He had only done his duty, as a good sheep pig would. He sat in the doorway of the stables and watched as the Land Rover drove into the yard, poor Ma's head lolling loosely over the back. He saw the boss get out and go into the house, and then, a few minutes later, come out again carrying something in the crook of one arm. A long, thin, a kind of black, shiny tube, and walked toward him. "Come, Pig," said Farmer Hoggett in that same cold voice, and strode past him into the stables. While, at the same moment, inside the farmhouse, the telephone began to ring and then stopped as Mrs. Hoggett picked it up. Obediently, Babe followed the farmer into the dark interior. It was not so dark, however, that he could not see clearly what the boss was pointing the black, shiny tube at him, and he sat down and waited, supposing that perhaps it was some sort of machine for giving out food, and that some quite unexpected surprise would come out of it in two small round mouths, held quite close to his face. Okay. At that instant, Mrs. Hoggett's voice sounded across the yard, called her husband's name from the open window. He frowned, lowered the shiny tube, and poked his head around the stable door. "Oh, there you are," called Mrs. Hoggett. "What do you think? That was the police, that was. They'll be ringing every farmer in the district to warn them. There's sheep worrying dogs about. They've killed 6 sheep on the other side of the valley only last night. They've been seen, they have. 2 of them it is, a big black one and a little brown one. They say shoot 'em on sight if you do see them. Better get back up the hill and make sure ours are all right. Do you want me to fetch your gun?" "No," said Farmer Hoggett. "It's all right," he said. He waited till his wife had shut the window and disappeared, and then he walked out into the sunlight with Babe following. "Sit, Pig," he said, but now his voice was warm and friendly again. He looked closely at the trusting face turned up to his and saw, sticking to the side of Babe's mouth, some hairs, some black hairs, and a few brown ones too. He shook his head in wonder, and that a slow grin spread over his face. "I reckon you gave them something to worry about," he said, and he opened the gun and took out the cartridges. Okay, we'll leave it there. Poor Babe, he almost got blamed. Luckily, he did not. See you tomorrow.